is safeguarding? Safeguarding, and for me, is an integral part of good quality health and social care delivery. So whether you're working as a professional health care worker in a hospital, in community care, in a general practitioner's practice, whether you work for a government organisation or a not-for-profit organisation or private healthcare, it doesn't matter. It's still an integral part of good quality health and social care delivery. It's about protecting people's health and well-being and upholding their human rights. So everybody has a right to live a life which is free from harm, abuse and neglect. And it's about safeguarding children and vulnerable people. And that's a collective responsibility. It's everybody's business. By vulnerable people, I've just highlighted that. So it's people adults who cannot protect themselves. So people who may be receiving care in their own homes, or maybe in hospitals, or may have a disability of some description. That could be physical, could be sensory loss, could be a mental health impairment, or a learning disability, but people who are not able to protect themselves from harm or abuse at the hands of others. So we need to be aware of safeguarding as a part of our health and social care delivery, and we need to be accountable to that. We need to look at people holistically, so it's not just about the presenting problem, it's often what sits behind that. And we just need to be aware of signs and symptoms. So if we need to dig deeper, look for more information, look at the person more holistically to find out what is going on. It's a crucial part of delivering a good health service. Okay, so can we have the next slide, please, Rabia? Thank you. This is just the Human Rights Act. So we're looking particularly at Articles 2 and 3. So everyone has a right to a life, and everyone has a basic human right to live a life free from harm, abuse or neglect. We shouldn't be too constrained in our view about what abuse and neglect looks like. We must always consider the whole circumstances of every individual and respect that people have got the right to take risks. And adults who can make their own decisions and make choices have the right to choose a risky situation if they want to do that. So when we're talking about the realms of mental health services, we often have to look at that person in the whole round. I'll give a brief example of that, of an elderly lady that I worked with who I think was being abused by her daughter who cared for her. Now, the lady was totally compos mentis, had the right to make decisions, and chose not to have that situation raised with the daughter. Now, she had a right to live in that situation. She didn't want to change that situation. I didn't think, although this was discussed with others within my professional sphere, that that risk was so significant that I needed to act. So therefore, we had a discussion and she allowed me a compromise of being able to telephone her once a week and to visit her once a week, or to arrange a visit for her once a week. So we were monitoring that situation in case of any escalation, but that would also provide a deterrent to her carer to know that that person had a one-to-one with somebody else twice a week. So if there was, that was likely to deter, in my view, that abuse from escalating or continuing in the same way. So we were working with her to build a relationship of trust. For her, the alternative options were not good and were far worse than the situation that she was living in, and that was a choice for her. So it's not always as clear-cut as we're going to go in and take action straight away if we think there's an area of concern. So the health services duty of care. So I'm now going to look at the duty of care. So it's kind of our code of ethics, really. All care staff have a responsibility and a duty to safeguard people who are in their care. So we need to look at the health and well-being of our patients and of our colleagues. For me, customer care is everybody I deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's the person who empties my bins, it's the person who I sit alongside and opposite, and it's the patients that I will, or service users that I meet every day. So I have a duty to those people, and that's the customer care that I deliver, and the duty is everybody. To always act in their best interests. So I'm acting in somebody else's best interest, not in the interest of other people sitting around them. To work in a way that will prevent abuse, and that's working in a very transparent, open and accountable way. I'll come on to those sorts of points later on in the presentation, but providing a good, safe working environment, and that's not a physical environment necessarily, that's the relationship, is halfway there to preventing abuse from occurring, and also for detecting and handling abuse. Not to act or to fail to act in a way that will result in harm to others. So it's not just about what we do, it's sometimes about what we don't do. And omission and failure to act can often be as abusive as an act of abuse. Again, I'll come on to that further in the presentation later on. The next point is around people who are not able to protect themselves. So it's not just about ensuring their health and safety, it's about providing vehicles for people to communicate. So quite often people with learning disabilities, people with dementia, in other situations are not able to communicate in a way that we are. So we need to provide additional measures for those least able to protect themselves from harm. So for children, for example, we do need to provide space for them to be able to communicate through play, through artwork, through pictorial leaflets, whichever way it is. There might be people with language difficulties. We need to provide that vehicle to allow them to communicate better. And the final point is about safeguarding in the UK, which differs from Pakistan in quite a lot of ways. But in the UK, we enshrine safeguarding in statute. It's absolutely founded from our legislation. So we have a whole set of governance in health and social care which enshrines safeguarding at its very core. So we have to behave in a certain way, and people are afforded that treatment, which is a very fortunate position to be in. People who suffer from kind of mental health impairment or disabilities of some description are 3 times more likely to be abused. And that's often to do with the fact that their disabilities can often mask any indicators. So they do have communication difficulties, or they may have behavioural traits which also might indicate abuse, so that the abuse is explained away by a disability. But also carers are often under a great deal of pressure, making that person much more likely to be abused as well, because of the frustrations that take place within the home environment. And the communication difficulties can often lead to abuse being ignored. So advocacy is really important, and actually giving people space to express their views and feelings is extremely important as well. Vulnerable people are often, easy targets. They're more dependent on care and the frustration of one person. So to, I suppose, express that frustration, it's quite easy for somebody who's very dependent and cared for to be in an abusive situation. Okay, could we have the next slide, please, Rabia?